Continuing to work with complex numbers, we're going to talk about multiplying them here, some different versions of this. First, we're going to talk about multiplying it just by a real number. We're going to just distribute. It literally just goes through like you would have thought with any set of parentheses. If this was x plus 2, you would use the distributive property. Well, we're going to do the same. We're going to send the 3 to the real portion. We're going to send it to the imaginary portion. Well, that's all there is to this part. So if we want to do this, we're going to send the 4 here. We're going to get 8. We're going to send the 4 there. We're going to get 20i. Okay, so you could pause it if you want. I'm sure you got the idea though. We're going to send this here, and that's going to make 5 over 2. Send it here. It's going to make negative 1i. All right, now let's get it a little bit more complicated. We're going to do some foiling here when we're going to have binomials. If essentially, I guess the principle we're looking here for is what happens if you multiply the imaginary portions together. And the secret is this. It's that I squared turns into negative 1. So why would that be? Well, isn't it true that if you multiply any root times itself, you get that number? Well, that has to be true for negative 1 as well. So if we multiply two negative 1's together, square root of negative 1's together, we get negative 1. Now remember, I is just an abbreviation for that. It's nothing new. It's literally just shorthand for the square root of negative 1. So if you multiply two of them together, you have to then get negative 1. So let's do this. What we're doing here is we're going to FOIL this out. We're going to go 4 to 2 gets me 8. 4 here gets me negative 20i. Now we're going to do the 3 through here. So now it's 3i coming here. We're going to get 6i. And the 3 is coming down here. And going to get us negative 15i squared. Now we're going to combine like terms, but here's the strange part. We've created I squared. And we know I squared is negative 1. So here's really what we have now. So this is all negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 15 is positive 15. So that's the trick. I squared is going to become negative 1, which is just going to change the sign of who he's with. And it's now a real number. It's no longer imaginary. So combining like terms here, we've got 23 minus 14i. All right, pause it, and if you want to try one on your own, I'm going to go through here. I get 6 plus 9i minus 8i minus 12i squared. Now the I squared is really negative 1 now. So we're going to just rewrite this. It's going to make that plus 12. Okay, let's combine like terms like we would normally do in the same situation with all real numbers. And there we go. 18 plus 1i. Okay, now this one's a little interesting here. This is a little clever. What we're going to do is we're going to simplify. What happens if I is taken to higher powers? So not just squared, what about cubed or to the 4th? And the logic is the same. I mean, but an interesting thing happens after you get to the power of 4. So I times I, we've already said is negative 1. Well, what if you did I times I times I? You could think of this different ways, but if we've already said I times I is negative 1, do you see how we would create negative I here? So I've got 3 in a row. I times I was negative 1. We already knew that. Now another I makes it negative I. And then what would happen if we had 4 of them in a row? Well, this makes negative 1, and this makes negative 1, so that must make positive 1. And so here's the punchline to this. Every grouping of 4 i's becomes 1. And so when you get to higher order here, like look what would happen with 5. Isn't 5 the same as I to the 4th times another I? Well, all of this is just 1. So every 4 i's is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with it. And all that's left is I. And so look at I to the 6th. Well, I don't like the way they did that. Let's do this. Every 4 of them, this is true, right? I to the 6th is I to the 4th times I to the 2nd. Every 4 of these is just 1. So it doesn't make any difference. we're really only left with I squared, which we already know is negative 1. And so what winds up happening here is, think about the remainder on the power. So let's do, if I had I to the 13th, what would you do? Well, I'm going to think of this as dividing it by 4. And if I did, now you could show this other ways, but I'm going to just concentrate. I to the 12th, which is the closest I can get to 13, I to the 12th is just 1, because it's every 4 i's is going to just turn into 1. So I to the 12th, because that's divisible by 4, all of that is just 1. Every 4 i's turns into 1. I'd have 1 times 1 times 1. That's still just 1. So this is just going to be I. So let's look at a problem here. So I have I to the 35th. Now I'm only going to need to worry about the remainder when I divide this exponent by 4. So you could divide this by 4 and you get 4 to the 8th. You could think of it like that. You could think of it like this: 4 to the 8th, and there's 3 left over. Now, I don't need you to do this. I'm just trying to show you all of this is just 1. So the way I'd recommend you think about this is I to the 35th is just turn it into the remainder, because the rest of it is just 1. If I divide this by 4, the closest I can get is 32. That leaves me a remainder of 3. Well, I to the third, there's only 4 to memorize. You get I squared is negative 1, I to the third is negative I, and I to the fourth is 1. So we have a remainder of I to the third. That's the only thing left over. That's negative I. Now it's a little weird. I hope you're following me here. Pause it if you want to try, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide 18 by 4, and the remainder is going to be 2. The closest I can get is 16, right? So I've got 2 left over. Well, I to the second is the only portion of this that's going to matter, and that's negative 1. So again, all you need to do is really memorize these 4, because after these 4, nothing matters. This is obviously I, this is negative 1, this is negative I, and this is 1. And the logic of these is just simply multiplying the square root of negative 1 around. This is pretty easy. You don't even, it's not much to memorize there. Just do it yourself, extend it. But to do an exponent, divide by 4. And then whatever the remainder is the only thing that matters. Okay, there weren't very many there, but I think the idea is pretty self-evident. So hopefully the worksheet will help you establish that a little bit deeper into your brain there. So again, the only thing that matters is the first 4 powers of I. And if you multiply 2 i's together, if you FOIL or distribute and create I squared, that makes negative 1.